the chairman of the occasion, distinguished guests, elders, scholars, lovers of history and culture, ladies and gentlemen, ndị Onicha Igboeze. My name is David Okorafo, and it is both an honor and a privilege to stand before you today to review a remarkable book titled The Foundation and Historical Development of Onicha Igboeze, Understanding the End from the Beginning, written by Mr. Agbafo Chinelo. This book is a 336-page book published in 2026 by Ice Canopy Limited, Enugu. This book, which is both iconic and timely, is more than a historical document. It is a cultural archive, a sociological mirror, an anthropological exploration, and above all, a passionate attempt to preserve the memory, identity, worldview, and civilization of the people of Onicha Igboeze for the present and future generations. In an age when many communities are gradually losing touch with their roots due to urbanization, westernization, migration, and generational disconnect, this work stands as an act of cultural rescue. The author understands a profound truth that when a people lose their history, they lose part of themselves. This is true. One of the strongest qualities of this book is its scope, which is very, very immense. The author does not merely tell us where the people of Onicha Igboeze came from. He attempts to explain how we lived, how we governed ourselves, how we married, worshipped, farmed, traded, named our children, resolved disputes, celebrated festivals, and interpreted life by ourselves. The work begins with the origin and migration history of Onicha Igboeze, tracing the ancestry of Igboeze Ukuna Oganianeke and linking oral traditions with colonial intelligence reports and local narratives. Mr. Agbafo carefully walks the reader through the genealogical structure of the clan, the formation of villages, and the social hierarchy that shaped the community. Particularly commendable is his honesty about the limitations of historical constructions and reconstructions. In the introduction, he acknowledges the uncertainties that surround oral history and human memory. Rather than pretending to possess absolute certainty, Mr. Agbafo presents his findings with humility while encouraging further research by future generations. This intellectual humility gives the book credibility. Another strength of this work lies in its treatment of culture not as an abstract concept, but as a living system. The chapters on fatherhood, motherhood, brotherhood, land sharing, apprenticeship, borrowing, hospitality, and communal relationships reveal a society that is built on duty, kinship, mutual accountability, and moral expectations. The section on marriage culture is especially detailed and sociologically rich. The author documents the stages of traditional marriage, informal and formal inquiries, what we call ebanjo, dowry processes, ime gisinwanyi, the role of middlemen, onye hinokba, family negotiations, and the philosophical foundations behind marriage customs. Whether one agrees with every cultural position presented here or not, one cannot deny the anthropological value of preserving these traditions in written form. Future researchers in African studies, sociology, history, linguistics, religion, and cultural studies will find in this book a wealth of raw indigenous material that might otherwise have disappeared. For instance, many of us who are listening today do not know some of the colloquial expressions that our grandfathers, our ancestors used in expressing very wise ideas. The author deserves praise for preserving indigenous language expressions, proverbs, concepts, and social technologies. Language carries memory, and memory carries identity. Through this work, many expressions that may have faded with time are now documented for posterity. One particularly interesting dimension of the book is the blending of traditional worldview with modern interpretation. At several points, the author draws connections between indigenous practices and concepts in genetics, governance, morality, technology, and social organization. This reflects an attempt to show that African traditional societies possessed systems of thought and logic worthy of study and reflection. The chapters on religion, festivals, kola nuts, drums, masquerades, and traditional institutions vividly portray the symbolic universe of Onicha Igboeze. The reader begins to see that these practices were not merely ceremonies, but structured ways through which the people understood authority, spirituality, social order, and communal identity. Equally notable is Mr. Aberfor's engagement with colonial history and post-colonial kinship politics. The discussion of indirect rule, clan courts, native authorities, and the emergence of modern kinship structures gives readers insight into how colonial administration reshaped indigenous governance systems. The language of the book is simple and accessible. The author deliberately avoids unnecessarily complicated academic language, making the work readable for both scholars and ordinary community members. This accessibility is particularly important because history should not belong only to the university. It should also belong first to the people whose story is being told. Of course, no historical work of this magnitude can entirely be free from controversy, disagreement, or areas requiring further verification. Some interpretations may generate debate among historians, elders of different families and lineages, but perhaps it is one of the strengths of this book because it reopens conversations that might otherwise have died in silence. This book is therefore not merely a conclusion, it is an invitation for further documentation, an invitation for younger generations to ask questions, an invitation for communities to preserve their memory before time erases it. In my view, the foundational historical development of Onicha Igboeze succeeds in its central mission, which is preserving identity through documentation. Aberfor Matthew Chinelo has rendered a significant service not only to us, the people of Onicha Igboeze, but to the wider project of African historical preservation. At a time when many communities possess rich histories but little written documentation, this work reminds us that local history matters, oral memory matters, and cultural continuity matters. I therefore commend the author for the courage, the dedication, the patience, and intellectual labor required to produce a work of this magnitude. To students, researchers, traditional rulers, cultural enthusiasts, and all sons and daughters of Onicha Igboeze, this is not just a book to buy and share. It is a book to read, a book to discuss, a book to preserve, and indeed, a book to pass on. Thank you very much for your attention.